So, the book in question. Sorry, it was slipping out of my hands. So this is the book in question. It's The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. The Song of Achilles. Yeah, I feel like the gold helmet is blinding y'all, so my apologies about that. So basically, I just finished reading this book. This copy is actually my sister's. They lent it to me. Has a lot to do with their personal gay awakening, so it's funny, but basically I'm gonna read the back to you. The legend begins. Greece in the age of heroes, Patroclus, an awkward young prince, has been exiled to the kingdom of Pitha to be raised in the shadow of King Peleus and his golden son Achilles, the best of all the Greeks, strong, beautiful, and the child of a goddess. Achilles is everything the shamed Patroclus is not, yet despite their differences, the boys become steadfast companions. Their bond deepens as they grow into young men and become skilled in the arts of war and medicine, much to the displeasure and the fury of Achilles' mother Thetis, a cruel sea goddess with the hatred of mortals. When word comes that Helen of Sparta has been kidnapped, the men of Greece, bound by blood and oath, must lay siege to Troy in her name. Seduced by the promises of a glorious destiny, Achilles joins their cause, and torn between love and fear for his friend, Patroclus follows. Little do they know that the fates will test them both as never before and demand a terrible sacrifice. Built on the groundwork of the Iliad, Madeline Miller's page-turning, profoundly moving, and blisteringly paced retelling of the epic Trojan War marks the launch of a dazzling career. Yeah. So basically, it's fiction, but I would say that it's like similar. It's an adult version, per se, of like Rick Riordan and the Percy Jackson. What are the other ones? The one about the Egyptian gods, etc., etc. You know, like it's similar to that, where it's like fiction, but it's based on history. You know what I mean? So I'm also told that Madeline Miller has a book called Circe, which is equally as good, so I'm going to have to buy that and read it. Yeah. I really like the writing. I would say that it's like really straight to the point. You know what I mean? And so, the reviews were good. By Anne Patchett, best-selling author of State of Wonder, she says, at once a scholar's homage to the Iliad and a startlingly original work of art by an incredibly talented new novelist. Mary Renault lives again, ravishingly vivid. I loved this book. The language was timeless. The historical details were slipped in perfectly. Miller's prose is more poetic than almost any translation of Homer. Madeline Miller grew up in Philadelphia, has a bachelor's and master's degrees in Latin and Ancient Greek from Brown University, and has been teaching both languages for the past 9 years. She's also studied at the Yale School of Drama, specializing in adapting classical tales for a modern audience. She lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I'm really sorry. I'm Canadian and I cannot pronounce Massachusetts. You just have to say it really fast. And The Song of Achilles is her first novel, an imprint of Harper & Collins publisher, etc., etc. So, yeah, I guess we should just get started. So, The Song of Achilles. The Song of Achilles. was written in 2012. This is the first edition. I think that there's like a different cover now. Yeah. So, Chapter 1. My father was a king and the son of kings. He was a short man, as most of us were, and built like a bull, all shoulders. He married my mother when she was 14 and sworn by the priestess to be fruitful. It was a good match. She was an only child, and her father's fortune would go to her husband. He did not find out until the wedding that she was her father had been scrupulous about keeping her veiled until the ceremony, and my father had humored him. If she was ugly, there was always slave girls and serving boys. When at last they pulled off the veil, they say my mother smiled. This is how they knew she was quite stupid. Brides did not smile. I'm going to admit that the first chapter is quite something. They're like really mean to this kid's mother. And I was like, whoa. Anyway, when I was delivered a boy, he plucked me from her arms and handed me to a nurse. In pity, the midwife gave my mother a pillow to hold instead of me. My mother hugged it. She did not seem to notice a change had been made. Quickly, I became a disappointment, small and slight. I was not fast, I was not strong, and I could not sing. The best that could be said of me was that I was not sickly. The colds and cramps that seized my peers left me untouched. This only made my father suspicious. Was I a changeling, inhuman? He scowled at me watching. My hand shook, feeling his gaze, and there was my mother, dribbling wine on herself. I am 5 when it is my father's turn to host the games. Men gather from as far as Thessaly and Sparta, and her storehouses grow rich with their gold. 100 servants work for 20 days, beating out the racetrack and clearing it of stones. My father determined the finest games of his generation. I remember the runners pressed nut brown bodies licked with oil. Stretching on the track beneath the sun, they mixed together broad shoulders, husbands, beardless youths, and boys that out thickly combed with muscle. The bull has been killed, sweating the last of its blood into dust and dark bronze bowls. It went quickly to its death, a good omen for the games to come. The runners are gathered before the dais, where my father and I sit, surrounded by prizes we will give to the winners. There are golden mixing bowls for wine, beaten bronze tripods, ashwood spears tipped with precious iron, but the real prize is in my hands, a wreath of dusty green leaves, freshly clipped, rubbed to a shine by my thumb. My father has given it to me grudgingly. He reassures himself, all I have to do is hold it. The youngest boys are running first, and they wait, shuffling their feet in the sand for the nod from the priest. They're in their first flush of growth, bones sharp and spindly, poking against on skin. My eyes catch on a light head among dozens of dark, tousled crowns. I lean forward to see. Hair lit like honey in the sun, and within it glints of gold, the circlet of a prince. He is shorter than the others, and still plump with childhood in a way they are not. His hair is long and tied back with leather. It burns against the dark bare skin of his back. His face, when he turns, is as serious as a man's. When the priest strikes the ground, he slips past the thickened bodies of the older boys. He moves easily, his heels flashing pink as licking tongues. He wins. I stare as my father lifts the garland from my lap and crowns him. The leaves seem almost black against the brightness of his hair. His father, Peleus, comes to claim him, smiling and proud. Peleus' kingdom is smaller than ours, but his wife is rumored to be a goddess, and his people love him. My own father watches with envy. His wife is stupid, and his son is too slow to race, even in the youngest group. He turns to me. That is what a son should be. My hands feel empty without the garland. I watch King Peleus embrace his son. I see the boy toss the garland in the air and catch it again. He is laughing, and his face is bright with victory. Beyond this, I pressing back to glass, or perhaps it is the sea itself she likes. At her temple a starburst of white gleams like bone, the scar from the time her father hit her with the hilt of a sword. Her toes poke up from the sand where she has buried them. And I am careful not to disturb them as I search for rocks. I choose one and fling it out, glad to be good at this. It is the only memory I have of my mother, and so golden that I am almost sure I have made it up. After all, it was unlikely my father to have allowed us to be alone together, his simple son and simpler wife. And where are we? I do not recognize the view of coastline. So much time has passed since then. Okay, now we're on to chapter 2. I would say that the chapters are quite short in this book, but I don't really mind. And there's like a lot of like skipping, like new scene. I don't really know what that's called. But anyways, I'm gonna read chapter 2 as well. I was summoned to the king. I remember hating this, the long walk up the endless room. At the front I knelt on stone. Some kings choose to have rugs there for the knees of messengers who had long news to tell. My father preferred not. King Tyndareus' daughter is finally ready for marriage, she said. I knew the name. Tyndareus was king of Sparta and held huge tracts of the ripest southern lands, the kind my father coveted. I had heard of his daughter too, rumored to be the fairest woman in her country. Her mother, Leda, was said to have been ravished by Zeus, the king of the gods himself, disguised as a swan. 9 months later, her womb yielded 2 sets of twins, Clyam, Dionysta, and Castor, children of her mortal husband. Helen, Polydeuces, the shining ingots of the gods were known to be notoriously poor parents. It was expected that Tyndareus would offer patrimony to all. I did not respond to my father's news. Such things meant nothing to me. My father cleared his throat loud in the silent chamber. We would do well to have her in our family. You will go and put yourself forth as a suitor. There was no one else in the hall, so my startled huff of breath was for his ears only. But I knew better than to speak of my discomfort. My father already knew that what I might say, that I was 9, unsightly, unpromising, uninterested. We left the next morning, our bags heavy with gifts and food for the journey. Soldiers escorted us. In their finest armor, I don't remember much of the trip. It was overland, through countryside that left no impression. At the head of the column, my father dictated new orders to secretaries and messengers who rode off in every direction. I looked down at the leather reins, smoothed their lap with my thumb. I did not understand my place here. It was incomprehensible as so much. What my father did was, my donkey swayed, and I swayed with him, glad for even this distraction. We were not the first suitors to arrive at Tyndareus' citadel. The stables were full of horses and mules, busy with servants. My father seemed displeased with the ceremony afforded us. I saw him rub a hand over the stone of the earth in our room, frowning. I had brought a toy from home, a horse whose legs could move. I lifted one hoof, then the other. Imagine that he'd ridden him instead of the donkey. A soldier took pity on me and lent me his dice. I clattered them against the floor until they showed all 6s in one row. Finally a time came in which my father ordered me bathed and brushed. He had me changed in my tunic, then changed again. I obeyed, though I saw no difference between the purple with gold, or the crimson with gold. Neither did my knobby knees. My father looked powerful and severe, his black beard slashing across his face. The gift that we were presenting to Tyndareus stood ready. A beaten gold mixing bowl embossed with the story of the Princess Danae. Zeus had wooed her in a shower of golden light. She had borne him Perseus, Gorgon's lair, second only to Achilles among her heroes. My father handed it to him. Do not disgrace us, he said. I heard the great hall before I saw it. The sounds of hundreds of voices banging against stone walls, the clatter of goblets and armor. The servants had thrown open the windows to try to dampen the sound. They had hung tapestries, wealth indeed, on every wall. I had never seen so many men inside before. Not men, I corrected myself. Kings. We were bow was mocked as the weapon of cowards, but no one could say such a thing about this bow. The strength it would take to draw it humbled us all. The next man, his eyes painted like a woman, spoke his name, Idomeneus, king of Crete. He was lean, and his long hair fell to his waist